It feels good to have spring come around, to see the flowers blooming and all the audio dramas that came this month. This month was a bit slower than the last couple, but that doesn't mean it was lacking at all. Let's take a look at the new, the long dormant and now returning, and the continuing. The Last Adventure is a new audio drama comic adaptation by Aveka of her own comic. This is a first from what I've seen, as most comic adaptations are dubs with editing, sound effects, and so on. What separates this from a typical comic dub is the hiding of comic bubbles in the editing and erasing of the dialogue within the bubble if it can't be hidden well, and the addition of songs and animatics. Thus, I feel it counts as an audio drama adaptation. So far, the story feels like a great taking off point from the series finale, addressing the commonly used idea of Twilight's or even Discord's immortality, the consequences of Discord's actions, and how the events have affected him, but more importantly, the idea of, have things really changed? That'll be addressed further into the series if you've been keeping up with the comic on Aveka's DeviantArt. Though we get a glimpse of this from the Chimeras speaking with the Timberwolves. What I want to address first is the immortality idea. As mentioned, this is something that has pretty much been done to death in every part of the MLP fandom. Go to Google, DeviantArt, or FimFiction, type Twilight's immortality, and I guarantee you'll find thousands upon thousands of pieces going over the same tired idea, of Twilight being depressed and unable to move on, in all sorts of flavors. What I like about this is how we're seeing Twilight come to terms with this for the first time. Not that it hasn't been done before, but it's paired along with Discord's internalization on top of this adventure. I'm not entirely caught up with the comic, but I could see how this adventure would help them in all their struggles. The way it's introduced is well done, with Sugarbelle bringing this to attention and Discord following it by speaking with Twilight, not about the matter, but about love, which surrounds all of Discord's conflicts. This is a great way of not only introducing conflict, but keeping balance, his struggles over his mistakes, his immortality, and coming to terms with his feelings. It all centers around the idea of love. It's naturally introduced via another's relationship, and further pushed by him seeing a stallion show Fluttershy ring he got for his beloved. All of these factors help to give a better understanding of Discord's character and conflict in a flowing way that doesn't feel like it's telling, but showing. There's also how Twilight comes across her conflict as well. It's clear that this is going to be the adventure she needs to properly come to understand her role as leader, with what I mentioned before about the Chimera. More importantly, she must face the fact that she will outlive her friends who have been by her side through everything, pulled her from her lonely life all those years ago, made her the pony she is today. That's not an easy thing to swallow, but how it's introduced with Discord was brilliant, and a lovely lead into the scene. The only issue I have is the lack of balance. Twilight needs more time. She needed to have more moments of addressing the conflict like Discord had. There were times I felt Discord's scenes could be cut down or changed, such as Rarity's scene. We already had the scenes he confront him. Sugarbelle? This scene should have been shorter or have Twilight address the idea in some form. It doesn't feel like it's adding anything that hadn't already been addressed before, and I feel that if anyone should be calling him out, it shouldn't be someone who isn't that familiar with him, nor in the thick of it. I think it's safe to say those who are there are pretty aware how guilty he felt, or those who know him knows he's cocky, immature, and has strange, even dangerous ways of going about his ideas, such as this. I could see Rarity still being upset out of everyone, but I feel the scene was otherwise unnecessary other than upsetting Fluttershy like he had, so keeping it brief and allowing for more time to focus on Twilight and build that up would have been better. I also feel the way Fluttershy blurting out her love for Discord was leaning into it too hard. I feel that it either came too soon, needed to be built up more, or could have used a better introduction. More could have been done in the scenes prior to express this, not that her blurting it out in such a moment is entirely wrong. More not led up to it all that well. Another note I'd like to make is the use of dialogue. There were times things got a bit wordy or telly. The worst of this being Sakura, who expressed more of what we knew than doing anything to move things along or give new information. Worse, it came off as if she was explaining things that had just been shown or being shown. That and her rhyming could have been better. What I do is write out the dialogue normally, then use a website that helps me find rhymes and work from there. I'll link the website in the description if anyone feels like this could help, as I know it can be a struggle. Certain scenes did better than others. I think Sugar Belle was a bit too quick to be curt or even too on the nose. I know she's the kind who speaks her mind, but it felt a bit too much. Even if she had a big mouth, I think anyone would know better than to tell someone you shouldn't love because you're immortal and they die on you no matter what. That's pretty cruel no matter who you're speaking to. Had he possibly bothered her or insulted her to a point, it'd have felt more justified. I did enjoy the addition of the song to show the duality between Twilight and Discord, seeing as they share the same conflict in two different places. Discord on the bottom both literally and visually, and Twilight and Cantula as beloved princess, yet despite this gap, they are on similar terms of struggle. This is part of the reason spending just a bit more time on Twilight would have helped the story. Let's take a moment and talk about the voice actors. It's clear there's some wonderful talent on display. Brian Random VA did a great job on his expression of Discord's character, as well as the tiger head, and Wupkick is a standout as always as Twilight. Personally, I enjoyed my role as the snake. I think I handled it well. Probably could have managed the s a bit better, but I think I improved in my recent recording for episode 2. Same for the goat, doing the ba, and acting is really tough. I feel it comes off robotic. Could be just me, but I also think that's how it is. Again, I think I've improved. At the same time, it's really, really tough to pull it off and well. Those who did minor roles such as the CMC with Sugar Cloud as Apple Bloom and Cloudy the Leopard as Scootaloo and Sweetie were well done, same with Geeky Sonic as Big Mac, but I felt Sugar Cloud as Spike and Sugar Belle were underwhelming. This will also apply to her performance as Fluttershy. She's lacking a lot of expression and emotional tone, not entirely monotone, but it's pretty close. It's clear there's an effort to raise her voice or give that extra, yet at the same time, it feels so samey, like she's holding back or trying desperately to hold voice while doing so. And really quick, I think Mika Hillis does well enough to capture Pinky's voice, but I'd like to hear some more energy. I don't think it's as strong as it could be. I can't exactly say how to fix this. I know I sometimes struggle with being loudly expressive when it comes to Fluttershy, because I worry I'll end up sounding like Pinky, but what I would say is don't be afraid to let it out. If someone's worried, get worried! Take how you're doing it and double the expression. When we voice act, we don't have body language or facial expression. We only have our voice. So finding the balance between exaggeration and not overacting is important. Sometimes it may be better to overact a little than underperform. I think Mika Hills does well enough to capture Pinky's voice, but I'd like to hear some more energy. I don't think it's as strong as it could be. Muse did well in expressing a lot of Verity's character and does great as Rainbow, she tends to. As for the princesses, she did well as Luna, but I feel her Celestia was a bit lacking. I know how it is trying to act as Celestia. I always worry of sounding like I'm droning when explaining things, as she isn't exactly an expressive character, at least compared to others. At the same time, there is an expressiveness to her voice I don't feel is being fully captured. What I do is I pull up a clip of Celestia from the show and listen to it while I record, playing it here and there between line readings. I'd recommend looking up some clips and studying how she speaks even when lecturing. There's a clear personality that shines through, even if it's kinda subtle at times. She does capture it with Luna, so I have no worries about her figuring it out with Celestia. Lastly, I want to touch on Pika's voice work as Starlight and Sakura. Firstly, Starlight. She definitely has the personality coming out. I especially heard it when Starlight was throwing Discord out. At times, I do feel like there could be a tad more expression, but that's not my main concern. My main concern is the nasal. There's a lot of frontal nasal happening. Not that Starlight doesn't have a slight hint of nasal, it's light and coming from the back of the throat. What I'd recommend is attempting to control the airflow from the front to the back if possible. I'd also focus more on a head voice. The impression is way too deep. Starlight's voice is higher pitched, and watch that Australian accent. I hear it coming through a little. Regardless, I'd say the character is there. That's the most important thing in an impression to me. As long as you get close enough for the voice, the character is what pushes the entire performance through. For Zecora, she has the tone down. I'm hearing the voice, but this time, I'm not hearing the character. Whatever she did here, her accent isn't coming through, but Zecora has a clear African accent. It's difficult to hold it for me when doing Zecora, so I know the struggle. My biggest issue is the lack of expression. Though Zecora, like Celestia, isn't very expressive, she has a clear way of speaking that gives off a lot of character. Her voice raises and lowers. It gets quiet and loud in an almost rhythmic fashion. She also stresses her vowels a lot as per the accent. I'd say study her clips, listen to them while recording, focus on how she pronounces and speaks. This will help the performance. Overall, a well-chosen cast. I had no major gripes anywhere. The sound production here was well done, everyone was clear. I have no major issues. As it is a comic-like adaptation, there is more focus put on the visuals, so I'm not going to be too touchy on audio. I won't touch on that here as I'm more focused on the audio, but I did enjoy the extra effects used. They were lovely, and I'd like to say the drawings were well done as well as the animatic. The use of sounds when used was also well done. So far, this is looking to be a well-made series that feels like an honest follow-up to the finale of the show. It's well done enough that I could see this being a proper continuation aside from a few issues. Despite its flaws, I feel it's well worth a watch. There's a lot of good here, lots of interesting ideas to come, and has a good amount of talent. From what I understand, there will be 3 episodes, which includes this one, so it's not going to be that long of a series. I'm looking forward to see how the story progresses. Followed Equestria Dead Tree, the adaptation, is back with Chapter 2, created by Shotgun Productions. If you haven't seen the coverage of it I did last time, you should go back to February's list from last month and take a look. The production has stayed the same since last time, so there's no need to cover many of the points I made, though there are things to talk about voice acting wise, which I'll get to. The story is progressing well. I'd say I enjoy this chapter more than I did the last. I love seeing how the characters are easing into camaraderie. Last time, it felt like they were all at one another's throats or on edge. Now they feel so much more comfortable. It could have come on a bit fast considering, but it's so well written I didn't mind too much. Everyone seems to be treating Sunrise more gently this time around. From Naoto's kinder tone he takes when she tries to help him, or Buddy who does what he can to protect her even at the risk of his own health and well-being. That scene especially got me, how it seemed Buddy wanted to protect something so precious, that being the innocence and goodness that Sunrise has despite the situation. Him hugging Sunrise, the delivery of the voice actor. That was the standout scene next to Sunrise comforting Corners, with her putting the box over her saying, "The box protects," despite her thoughts of Corners being a little crazy. There were so many amazing little details, from Corners using her box as a decoy, the gentler tones of the characters of Sunrise, how Sunrise clings onto her morals, and how out of place she is in a world so cruel. Sunrise getting excited over the robot trying to kill them, or how Chifundo refers to Sunrise as a runt because of his rhyming schemes. On top of that, there are other curiosities such as Corner's unnatural eyes, and though not a mystery, a few things were revealed about Sunrise with her perceptive sense like Pinky's, or how her tail has some autonomy in its ability to grab things or even think on its own. As powerful as big moments can be, the dramatic and downright heart-wrenching, I feel it's the little moments or details people tend to neglect. They can be some of the most important things in your writing, as can be seen here. It's the little touches, the subtle changes, the softer moments of characters interacting that build and bring out the best of the bigger ones. This is a prime example of that. Voice-wise, there were some changes, specifically the narrator. This time, the narrator is Fauna Joy, who is very different from the previous narrator. She isn't nearly as expressive as the last, though. You can hear subtle bits of emotion as you'd expect from a narrator. Not that she has to be, but it's a clear change. As much as I enjoyed the energy and expressiveness of the last, I did enjoy the more typical narrating style of Fauna, who did a good job. The other extra voice actors this time around did good in their parts, but I want to give special mention to Spring Bronco's voice actor, Cinder Script, who did a good job. The character of Spring Bronco kind of acts as a means of showing Sunrise how truly awful and gray this world has become. A character who, according to him, felt pressured in becoming a raider because of his situation, resigning himself in his own words, calling himself a bad pony, how he'll never be a good pony. Despite giving him mercy, he still betrayed the group and died for it. It's one of the first lessons Sunrise will have to learn, that there is no mercy in this new world, and how you need to be cautious with who you come across. That kindness isn't always the answer. If I had to make one point of critique, the sound effects of the robot at the end got pretty loud. It was nearly drowning out the dialogue. I get wanting to make it sound realistically loud, but you shouldn't do it so much that you can't hear the characters or narrator. Followed Equestria Dead Tree, the adaptation, is doing great with its presentation, sound production, and cast. If you still haven't checked it out or the first chapter wasn't pulling you in, I'd say give this one a try. Things are moving much smoother in this chapter, the writing's tighter. I think if you didn't exactly get convinced by the first chapter, this one will let you know if it's for you or not. The bloopers are out for this chapter and the next has released, but I'll be covering that one next month. I'm glad to see this series release another episode. It's been some time. The Storyteller, a Followed Equestria lore series made by Nuclear Horseman Studios, has released its third episode going over the history of the Ministry of Morale. For those unfamiliar with Followed Equestria, before the war, the main six created their own ministry, each tackling a certain, I suppose, need during the war. Pinky is the head of the Ministry of Morale, but the history isn't as clean-cut as that. From what was explained here, there was a lot of madness from corruption to Pinky's drug addiction. In a way, it both feels strange that Pinky's would be the most corrupt, yet it makes sense Pinkie Pie would get addicted to this drug called Mintells, which causes your mind to function at a higher rate, helps with thinking, and with Pinky being Pinky, it caused more extreme effects. These little details make this lore series so interesting. I'm pretty sure this takes a lot from the original fanfiction. Since I've never read it, it's hard to say if any of it is created by the writer or not. There are a lot of other great details, like how this drug helped to get her criminals before they could act. Pinky making her own variant of the drug, how Zakora was a double agent, how the drug drove her too far, trouncing over the law she was meant to protect, how she's like Big Brother and always watching, interrogation, and disguising hubs as theme parks. It's crazy how one of the most fun-loving, happy ponies, who always wanted the best for everyone, led quite possibly the worst of the ministries. Everything information-wise is wonderfully presented, well-written, and feels like an actual history lesson of sorts, organized in such a comprehensive way where everything leads into the next. The voice acting here is great. Forks McGilvery is perfect for the role of the storyteller. His voice feels like the kind of voice who would be a source of information giving, and does great in the delivery of lines. The Looney Turtle also did great as the voice of Mud. The voice used gives so much personality to the character. The dynamic between the characters works wonderfully, with the dim-witted Mud and his interest in the storyteller's information. Everyone else did great as well. The overall presentation, the use of sound effects, filters, it was all top-notch, including the background music that fits so well. Overall, no complaints in the sound department, and with such personality-filled characters from the writing to the voice, everything is spot on. I will say, the filter on Spike is a bit grating. It could have been toned down a bit. If you want to learn more about the lore of Fallout Equestria, or perhaps this interpretation, again, I only know so much, this is a great place to look. The presentation is on point, the voice actors are well cast and doing a great job, and the way everything is delivered is well done all around. I highly recommend it for Fallout Equestria fans, but for those not interested in its history, may not find as much enjoyment as me. Still, I feel it's worth a try with how good this series is. I hope to see more in the future. It's nice to see the series is still continuing. The Adventures of the Doctor and Luna, made by Random Marcus 92, has released the 5th episode. As for the previous episodes, I can't say I was all too invested. I think it's okay, a bit bland, but there are instances where there are good ideas. It's not necessarily poorly written, but it's not all too well crafted in parts either. Simply put, the Doctor and Luna go way into the past where there are giant ponies at war. One side unicorns, one side Pegasi. The Doctor and Luna are taken to a respective side of this conflict because of being on territory. From there, it's slowly built up to finding the reason this whole thing was started in the first place and helping to stop it. My biggest problem in the writing is it's odd. Odd in that it feels like things are progressing way too slowly, characters don't act naturally like they're people, for lack of a better word, and the reason for things are just dumb. I don't know how else to put it. I think that the intent are these points are just plain dumb? The problem is this is supposed to be early Equestria, where Luna's father is born, and they're too stupid to function apparently. The one side takes the Doctor because they need a doctor. Reasonable. The other side takes Luna because she's a princess. There's no reason in particular given if she'd be the prince's wife, they just need a princess, I guess. Because the leader wasn't that great of a leader? The reason they're fighting is because the river changed directions to benefit the side of the Pegasi, and the unicorns thought they took the river away. The Pegasi's crop were also destroyed, and when they asked the unicorns, who came over to accuse them of the river's change of direction and meeting one another for the first time, if they did it, they denied it as the Pegasi did for the river. There's no evidence of either side being at fault. I'm also aware they have tribe names, I think, but there's only one credit mentioning character name, that being Princess Alanelle, or any spellings, and some of the names are a bit weird, or this filter makes it hard to hear speech clearly, so I'm calling them the Unicorn and Pegasi tribes for simplicity. Furthermore, there's some creature that's a god or something. I honestly have no idea. It's just there in a plot device. Nothing's really explained well. It was at fault the whole time trying to get the two tribes to unite, but they took things the creature did as a sign of war, I guess. The thing is, there's some prophecy they got about how they shouldn't merge or the sky would burn. It turns out they're supposed to do this to get the sun, stars, and I guess the moon in the sky, and they're all just too dumb to figure it out. This takes 40 minutes to get to in the story, all with a forbidden lovers plot with the princess and prince of both sides where the princess is pregnant. It honestly takes way too long to get this across and feels like something that could have easily been covered in 20 minutes. Look to Avatar's The Great Divide to see what I mean, which is a great comparison, as this feels equally as dumb. I don't mean to be mean, I honestly have no other way to describe the convoluted nature of this plot. Luna even sits this unruly prince down by scolding, which didn't seem to work before. How after a pony called this other mom, and this needed to be clarified that the pony's a mother, the whole thing with Luna being crazy for mentioning the sun and moon seemed to go nowhere. Somehow the Doctor happened to put an earpiece communicator on Luna before getting kidnapped, and suddenly remembers he did it so conveniently when he needed to talk to Luna. Or how the two ponies that dragged them to each side were trying to assassinate their leaders for being traitors, each with poison, but they're not working together or anything? And how did ponies get so small if this is where it all started? What about Earth ponies? And this monster thing I can't describe as there's no description or image. I wish I could focus on the characters and story, but both feel so poorly handled aside from the Doctor and Luna. Is it because of the time period that they act so unnaturally? The unnatural feeling of the characters is further pushed by the voice acting. I asked my friend the acting sounded strange to them, and she agreed, so it's not me. There's something so off and wrong in the delivery and voice of the giants, and with Luna and the Doctor there, right for comparison, it only makes it worse. I'd list off the actors and give individual critiques, but it seems as if all the voices were done by two people, aside from the one princess. The best I can say is the doctor did the best job. Luna's expression could use a bit of work, and everyone else sounded weird. I can't describe it. I think there were effects used on the voice actors to make them seem like giants, which I think is an interesting touch, but I also noticed there was a lot of weird distortion that sometimes came up. The only problem is I would have liked more done to the audio to differentiate giants from the smaller Doctor and Luna. I think there was at times, but it's hard to say. There were some hoof flops from the running and magic, but none for walking or very little for spell sound usage. The sounds were good when they came in, yet were inconsistent in use. Overall, though, there was a clear effort to have great audio with the use of sounds, especially in the beginning. Balance in audio so nothing is too loud or quiet, clean audio, and other effects to give off the effects and imagery it did, such as the creature's roars and the TARDIS touching down, among other effects. With how many Doctor Who's audio dramas are out there, I'd say you could do better and you could do worse. There's nothing inherently wrong with the writing, as the dialogue, when not strange or oddly delivered, was average. The acting was weird to good, and the story, though slow and overall odd in all kinds of ways, wasn't that bad. At times the dialogue was off. With the little use of pictures, I feel more instances of description would be useful to get an idea of the places they're in or how characters look. And if it is only two voice actors doing the voices, I highly recommend finding a few more voice actors for variety, as even with the filter, it was noticeable in how similar delivery and voices could be. There were interesting ideas. I like the Forbidden Love and how that changed how I viewed those two characters, especially how sweet the prince got when he heard his beloved was pregnant. I'd say give it a try if you like Doctor Who's, but otherwise, you can do better. Forrest is back again with another 2 episodes of Followed Equestria Lost Audio Files. This time, we'll be looking at episodes 12 and 13, The Narrator and Red Eyes. The first is pretty easy to understand, the idea provided by Penguin Gunner. The narrator is about a pony who seems to narrate whatever they see or do, speaking in third person. This changes when they come across a horrific scene of a filly crying, the dead bodies of their loved ones around them. Slowly, the narrator breaks and thanks the filly for helping them, taking them in, it seems. The idea here is so well executed. Thanks to Forrest's performance, you feel the pain and hear the characters slowly break. In less than 2 minutes, you feel the full emotional impact from this one moment. If I have to have some issue with it, it's the fact we don't hear the filly crying. You hear the hoof steps and all, but not the crying. I'm not sure if this would have interrupted the emotion being built up, but I thought it was a bit odd with how detailed the sound production is. The second required a bit of research on my part, and even then, I don't think I got the full effect. The idea was provided by K.K. Wilson. Red Eyes won the antagonist of Followed Equestria, and this seems to be when he died. He seems to be a character who once had this ideological idea of saving the wasteland, but turned evil by establishing slavery. From what I understand, him and the hero of the story, Little Pip, are a lot alike, but on opposite sides of the moral spectrum. If I had any idea of the character or story of Followed Equestria, I probably would have gotten the full impact of the story. Otherwise, I feel it's working. I simply struggle to get the desired outcome due to lack of context. Not that it's needed here. Obviously, this is for those who are familiar with the source material. As always, Forrest does an amazing job adapting these ideas into fully fledged stories and characters. If you aren't familiar with Followed Equestria, stick with the narrator this time. It requires no extra reading or knowledge of any sort. Red Eye should be listened to by those familiar with the source material, and especially the history this character has with Little Pip to get the full effect. Otherwise, well done, and I look forward to more shorts in the future. That's all the audio dramas for this month. Let's take a look at updates, sneak peeks, trailers, and casting calls. Remembrance Episode 9 is well on its way, and with the later teaser and release, it's finally here for anyone to see. Why not go watch it if you're interested in the series, assuming you haven't already? It's unfortunate to say that Pegasus Princess has not only been cancelled but deleted, because the channel it was on was deleted. Another teaser trailer from My Little Pony: The Unexpected Future has released. It seems like a nice trailer that only tells so much, but if we knew everything, why watch the series? Links in the description. The Color Gods has announced a release date which has since passed. With the episode out, you may as well go see for yourself what's happening with the cast if you've been keeping up with the series. The Bad Gamer Boys creating a fan spin-off to My Little Pony featuring OCs. There doesn't seem to be any canon characters, and there's a need for both male and female voices. Go see if any role interests you. Knick Knack is working on a fanfic adaptation of the Crusaders Save Heartswarming. The casting call will be going on for a while, so don't worry about the deadline just yet. There's a need for a narrator, the CMC, Mr. Humbuck, Applejack, Pinkie Pie, Rarity, Derpy, and some Townspony's extra singers. Go check it out. Links in the description. Candy Cruise finally released the casting call results for Rise of the Sisters' recent casting call. Congratulations to all who were accepted, and I can't wait to see your contributions. Mother Chrysalis had a live Q&A stream where the cast who can make it answer your questions. I was there myself and it was a great time. Though you can no longer ask questions, you can see our responses to those given. Go check it out. That's all the audio drama goings on for this past month. Be sure to check everything out, all links in the description. If there's something I missed, be it a casting call, drama, what have you, and you would like me to talk about it, send it through the comments or throw a note on DeviantArt. I have all the stipulations and such linked in the Google Doc below if you're not sure if yours does or doesn't count. Otherwise, I'll let you know. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun listening and helping out with these awesome productions.